So just to introduce myself, my name is Carmen. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the manager here at Luan Gallery, and I'm really delighted to see so many of you here today to meet and welcome our exhibiting artist Derick Smith and also our curator Valeria Ceregini. So today we're joining one another really to find out more about Derick's work, the process behind his work, the inspiration behind his work, and also I think it's going to be a really interesting dialogue between artist and curator about the vision for this exhibition, The Soul of Matter. You've all had a chance to walk around, you'll have seen, you can't miss the vibrancy of this work. I hope you've seen the rhythm of the movement in Derick's work as well. For me, that's probably one of the most appealing and attractive attributes of his style, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. These two bounce off very well off each other. They've been friends for years, and I think I could be correct in saying that maybe you've done a little bit of mentorship with Derick on his practice. So from that end, it's going to be very much a two-way conversation between Derick and Valeria, but also you'll have the opportunity as well, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make. And what we do is, in terms of format, we move from space to space, and we give you an opportunity as we're moving from one room to the next, and then you can ask Derick your questions. Also, just to let you know, you have seen we're recording, we're live streaming at the moment on our Instagram account. For those of you who don't want to be in that, just you can keep out of Louise's line of vision in terms of the Luan Gallery.
Can I go?
You can turn your back if you like. And lastly, before I hand you over, I'd just like to acknowledge the sponsors of today's event. So Creative Ireland and Westmeath County Council have kindly sponsored the event. So without further ado, I hand you over to Valeria and to Derick, and look forward to hearing more, as I've said, about his practice and his work and his inspiration. So there you go. Thank you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for this nice introduction, and thanks for coming. And I would like just to start probably from this point from the table, and then about talking more about Derick's practice and probably about the exhibition, and then you can talk because this is your exhibition. So the title, The Soul of Matter, I feel like it's really at the base of this exhibition, the idea of anyway the connection that there is with matter, with really the substance of the paint, and as you can see from this table, it's really important, I think, and I don't know if I'm saying correctly, but anyway, everything that is connected with really with the practice, with the research and study. You can see so many study of color and material, and you can see here all these objects that are coming from directly from his studio, and we decided to exhibit all these objects because probably they are giving a better introduction to his practice, his work, because it's not only about beautiful and vibrant colors, but it's much more connected with the research, really. And that is what I try to explain through the title and through this table, because you can see how many objects you can see here, and then how many really, I feel like all these objects, they have an own life, because they are representing really the base of the material and how he's manipulating the material, the colors and paint. But at the same time, it's not only about a research, about practice as an artist, but I feel like during all these years, you trained yourself, disciplining yourself, doing all this beautiful, for me, are gorgeous, those notebooks, because every time you need to record and remember what you are doing, just to be very skilled artist, and then to get really the confidence that you need to be an artist and to be a better anyway person as prepared to face all the issues that all the time you are facing when you are an artist, and especially when you are working with these materials, because you don't know exactly what will happen. So for me it is about, you see all these materials and the craft and all the failures or mistakes that are at the base of anyway of our life, because without mistakes we can learn. So this is what it representing me, very practice, but at the same time to be really a good artist that is trying to be all the time a better artist, and try to arrive at, not at the perfection, but to arrive to become something better, and propose all the time something new and something that is representing a process and a time that anyway is part of really of the life and everyday life. So this is my short introduction about your work. Then I give you yeah, the word. So go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Valeria. So with my work with all of these kinds of experiments, I tried to find my own way to use the materials, and I didn't want to build on somebody else's knowledge. So I started from the beginning, from first principles with pigments and mixing my own paint, and then I think, incrementally started to build my confidence. So, and part of that was to record everything and to remember, like, if it's recipes or mixtures of some description, how they behave. So that could be video, could be photographs. I mean, if you're making something that's liquid, you can measure the ingredients, and then, but how it moves is different, so I have to have another way to measure that. So, something that was mentioned earlier, that Valeria definitely helped me with, was to treat this material with a little bit more respect, to archive it, because I have thousands, hundreds of these things that I did over the years, which, to me, if they weren't a finished painting, I would just I have to get rid of that. But there's a value in seeing what it is and where it came from. And thankfully, my parents are here and their house is full of this stuff.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean?
Have a private collection of
Basically,
all of your
all the
tests.
experiments are there. So that's part of the I suppose the work is this. You're going through so much material all the time, different kinds of materials, art materials, non-art materials, and so for me everything is about this. It's about the experimentation and the constantly trying to find a new edge or a new way to use the material, and so it all builds around this. And again, it was Valeria's idea to install kind of a workspace which would be quite similar to this, maybe a bit taller.
Yeah.
And a lot messier, maybe stuff everywhere. So I don't know what else.
But sorry, I'm interrupting you, but just because again, this is something that is an exhibition that yes, I was there as a curator, but anyway, it was more like a curator and artist friendship and relationship that has connection to find a better way how to express really and introduce his practice to someone that has no, idea about art in general, or usually because Derick is using all these colors, and people, they are absolutely attracted by colors, and that is really peculiar color and so vibrant. But at the same time, I see how much he's all the time maybe struggling, I don't know if it's the right word, but anyway, try and cast and try again and mixing all this receipt. For me, it's probably because Italian, I feel like a receipt that he is all the time preparing something to cook, because it's all the time you have just to test and see if it's working or not. And having here the replica of his studio and all these things that you are all allowed to touch and see, because you can imagine how it's, anyway, you think maybe something is heavy and it's not. So there is this kind of contradiction between the material, a kind of a tactile vision you can have in his work. It's more like, really, it's not about only a painting that you're supposed to be have a flat surface, two-dimensional. But in this case, using clay, and anyway, even when he is using acrylic painting, you see how there is substance and consistency in all drops and everything. And even the use of the canvas is not anymore like a square, but you see again how this big drop is just falling apart, and that's absolutely something new. And you see then in the other room, you will see how the work is giving you the chance to move and see around and through the painting. So it's a kind of a different perspective to see and look at the work and a painting in particular. And then again, looking at that piece, Ostrakon, it's something like it's coming from an object that was just, again, a task that was broken, but at the same time you can see how it is beauty anyway. So that is coming from all our conversation during the lockdown when we were stuck in our house, and we had just a chance to have this Zoom call. And anyway, I saw the beauty of all this test and all this experiment, and even they were broken pieces, not finished, but anyway they preserve the beauty and the identity of the artist, because there is impressive the energy and all this kind of really try and try and try again, and you see how much I really this is one of my favorite pieces, I have to admit, because I see all the process and everything that is happening when you are working. And so this is, I don't know, the beauty of your work. And at the same time, even that canvas that we left there, it's kind of, you can see there is a front, there is a back, and you can turn that canvas and see how many really tests he did, and all those other pieces that are rich and they are full of energy anyway. There is a kind of creativity that is impressive on all these tests, and for me are even better, I have just to say, than the finished painting or the finished work, because in those I can see really all the energy and all the research that there is in your work.
Well, you have this sense of like a finished painting, a sketch, and a lot of times the sketch will have more life, will have more vibrancy or energy, and even historically there's a lot of oil paintings. John Singer Sargent, I think, is this really loose, unfinished style, and those kinds of works, they have a different kind of life. So I've tried to keep my curiosity with these materials, and as long as, if I don't know how it's going to work out, I'm really engaged, I'm really involved with it. And sometimes if I can guide that, it can sort of build into a piece of, like a finished piece. But the formal idea of a finished and an unfinished piece, I found that quite difficult. So you see things like cardboard, because it's readily available. It's like, well, I don't know if this is going to work out, so I'm going to get a canvas or stretch a canvas and just, start to work on it, where I don't know if this will go anywhere. So I needed to use a lot of materials to be able to eventually say, okay, now I think I understand how these materials work, and then maybe I could, work on a different scale. I could try stretching a canvas, but again, it's incremental steps. But really, that idea of the sort of finished formal work, again, hanging in the gallery versus, the thousands of hours and everything else that goes into it, which to me has, as Valeria said as well, to me, obviously I see narratives here, I see all these different experiments, I see where I was and, what I was thinking at the time, and so it has that sort of personal quality. It doesn't have to, I still think it has this kind of curiosity, this is intrigue about it. It's like, what is this? So, one other thing, again, with this work over here, when you take a picture of anything and you put it on the wall in the gallery, it has an importance. Either being in the gallery makes it important, or the artist thinks it's important. but these four corners of this canvas tells you this thing is important. Okay, and that's just the convention of looking at photographs or paintings. So with this, I thought, like, you know, the wall is important, you know, the roof is important. What can we do that, what can I do that would bring you into this place, that would, you know, so that you're not looking at a scene and you're thinking of, oh, this is the ocean in the west of Ireland. You know, what could you do that makes you be in this moment, in this place? So part of it for me was this idea of subversion of the canvas and just to let the paint come off it into this place, you know. So it's like kind of a playful thing, but it ties in with my work with like the ideas of the formal finished painting and the energy of the sort of experiments and the sketches. So that's a theme that I've carried throughout. Yeah, so and then things like again, yeah, so if you just take paint, if you take your paint and you put it on a canvas, is that a painting? Or is that like a canvas with paint, you know? So you can get into this kind of idea. So I was just putting paint on a canvas over here. And yeah, I think it's kind of like this one. I don't think I could do less with this, but still a painting, you know? So it's that line of, this is quite complex, but I'm always looking for simplicity. I'm always looking for the simplest, the most elegant way to present something. And so all of the complexity of this, I kind of distill it into the pieces that I think are most sort of substantial, and then I, you know, maybe I'll try a different scale or whatever. So, yeah, I like clay, for example, because it's very malleable. It's almost like liquid in a sense. There's a liquid quality to the paint. So that's another reason for this kind of dripping and everything, is that it's, although it's frozen and it's fixed, it still has the sense that it's moving and it's alive and it could sort of, you know, come off the canvas. To me, there's an aspect of time there, you know, because it's attempting to address this moment, not to send somebody into the past or the future. So, yeah. There's only one piece here, and it has these sort of ellipses on it.
Sorry, do you want to move over here beside
Yeah, sorry, yeah. This one was one of only ones I did because with the rest of the pieces, there's no necessary drawing or shapes or designs. Where this one, I started to experiment with designs, with shapes, and I didn't want to go that way, because then you are, you know what I mean?
I know.
It's different, it's a different avenue, but I did a lot of it, so that was why this is included. Because you're tapping into the ideas of circles and squares, and it gets, I don't know, it's a bit too, it can be symbolic, a bit too abstract in that realm, where, I mean, like, this one.
This is not so abstract. Because anyway, you can see and recognize circles and everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, for me, from my point of view, it's like maybe, okay, I feel more abstract, all the things that you are doing in your research, more than when we are going to be finished. Because, of course, you have to present something to the audience. But at the same time, I can see lines, and for me, lines could be like landscape. You can connect all these things with something. But at the same time, I feel like you are trying in all your practice to just erase, I don't know, or delete all these elements that can be reconnected to a figurative element, just to be free to express your work, and probably the power of color without any connection with the reality.
Well, it's not to remove, it's actually not to move away from reality,
Okay.
but it's to move away from references. So,
Yes.
Yeah, see, if I tell you this now, you're going to look at this differently, but to me, I did this when I had a studio in the forest, and it was during lockdown, and, you know, I had no car at the time, so I didn't really see anybody, but I did see the horizon. There was a lake and there's hills and stuff. And that's all I see when I look at this. But, you know, now that I've told you that's how you'll see it. So I don't want to do that in the same way where you tell a person, here's a portrait of the Queen or something. So then you have to invoke all of these historical and sociological ideas. So I want you to have your experience, which is as valid, if not more valid, than the next. So, and a part of that is colour. Colour has the most incredible ability to transform things. Like I love the colour of your cardigan. You know,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So it just has a life. It just has an ability to energize things where I don't necessarily think. I did a piece last year, and my brother said, he goes, I see the German flag in there. And I was like, well, you know, I can't be responsible for that, you know. But that's how his most readily identifies those colours, you know. But I wanted to try to find another way to present the colours and to free them in a way. Let them just be these colours that you can, either you can hate them or you can have a response or you can, you know, sort of engage with them in a different way. So I just went for it. I just had at it. Just get all the yellows, get all the greens, whatever, and just kind of go for it, you know.
So maybe we can move now in the River Gallery, so just to have another experience about different materials and colors again.
And before we move, does anybody have any questions?
Oh, yes,
or
of
comments?
course.
Yeah.
I've got a question. It's how you connect clay and paint in your work.
Once more, sorry.
How you connect clay and paint in your work, because you said about the liquid elements.
So the liquid element, clay is very expressive. So when it's the oldest material.
Yeah.
People build in pots. People could build like, you know, you could plaster a house in clay. It has this really, really old association, and it's still used. It's still as useful and practical. So with the colours that I use or with the paints that I use, putting them together, these to me are very free materials. That's what I meant when I tried to connect them, to see how the expressiveness of clay could harness the expressiveness of the colours. So another thing for me, if I just, because of the world we live in, like if I just had these colours flat on the wall, you see it in one way, you recognise it in one way, but so I've always tried to get texture, because in the texture you can see the shadow in here, you can see the highlights, you get this range of colours. And you don't think about that, but you know the way your eye is built, that there's shadows and highlights and the light comes from above. And you can feel the texture with your eyes. So that's one of the reasons why clay was important to me.
So would you say there's an element of plasticity, like you can manipulate
Exactly.
the materials as well as the work of art has a life of its own, and then the observer will take from the experience whatever they need to experience in that precise moment.
You see, there is that thing where I don't want to narrow down somebody's experience, but I have to give them something. It's no good for me either to say like, just throw a load of paint and go, yeah, that's whatever you want. It's just, yeah, just have it. You can call it whatever you want. That's sort of meaningless itself too. So there has to be some thread or some strand. And I have mine obviously from making this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily have to be yours, and shouldn't. Although all you're going to see here now are these horizons. You know, it's because I told you that. Any other questions there? No?
No, I love that you weren't precious with paint there.
No, not at all. That's the other thing, because paint is so expensive.
Because some people, because artists are always, you're always thinking about the quantities and you just let it go.
Well, that was the thing, so, and that's all these experiments. So step by step, I was like, this paint is so expensive. So if I'm going to start to, so I worked small in the beginning, I was like, right, I'll test it with this. Until I got confident enough to like, okay, because a few of them didn't work out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what am I going to do with this paint now? You know, so that's part of it, I suppose, part of, you know, building your confidence. So.
Derick, at the minute, do you have any, I suppose, would you prefer to work large scale or small
I
scale?
was just having a conversation. Small scale is because it's taken me, it's about confidence, it's about the scale of the potential disaster, really, if that's in your mind. So working on a larger scale, and if it doesn't work out, it's expensive, or expensive mistakes. So actually at this point, smaller works are more difficult. You've got smaller brushes, you've got smaller details. Larger works are more forgiving, if you do these kind of big strokes, you don't know if it should have been up here or down here, so I've concentrated for so long on these kind of smaller works, but now I really want to
break free.
basically use, because I'm quite a tall person, I want to be able to use the whole arc of my arm, and so, because this work here, you wouldn't really know that I did it necessarily based on scale, you know what I mean? So that's how I feel. Whereas
it's just interesting to see where you are in your own headspace at the moment, and maybe what direction you kind of like to go from here.
Well, this show is quite important to me because it's been like there's strands, there's been thoughts and experiments for years, and then to finally have this sort of formalization of them. But now I need to sort of,
This is a starting point.
basically, it's a starting point. Yeah,
More than something that is close. Okay, maybe this exhibition now with these 3 rooms that they are explaining or showing that your work during all these years, and then now you can be free to move on and find another strand, another way to express yourself in a bigger scale, and then find another way, anyway, keeping always probably your identity, because I know that you can, of course, this is you, and when the first time I met you and you were doing other things, maybe closer to this painting, and then at the same time I remember that anyway you were already, not obsessed, but you were already thinking about giving a substance to color, and find a way to give, just to introduce this sculpture in a painting world that is strange, because of course all the time painting, you think painting, okay, flat surface, that's fine. But then you tried all the time to remove all these references, find a real abstract way to express yourself, and at the same time find a way to give body to the color, and not only, okay, paint, that's fine.
Yeah, that's the thing, that's the same point as where, because you grow up on posters and televisions and flat screens and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And this sort of bands of colour have a certain, you see them in a certain way, you respond or you don't, whereas I always feel things that can cast a real shadow, things that are sculptural, you see them in a different way. They're more grounding, they're more involved with the space, because the quality of light is different when you move around them. So certainly for me anyway, so sculpture works, or so it sort of brings me more into where I am, which is important, I think, to be where you are. So.
And apt to be having this conversation on International Sculpture Day.
That's fine.
We move into the next space.
We move in the other space, but then we will be back in
Valeria and Derick maybe go in the centre, and we'll split up either side. So we might need to split up half and half, because it's Derick, you wait between each coloured line.
Depends on the work, depends on the type of work. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's some pieces that have to be done together. Otherwise, when it dries, it's too flat to put another colour on, so you don't see texture. So, if I knew a way to do this, if there's a book or a guide, I would have got it years ago. So a lot of it is just like, okay, well, this is what I figured this is how it works, so I'll try that, so.
But this is what you are doing instead for all the others.
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
Yes.
It's sort of.
So this is, for me, it was really a surprise, because again, it's in a certain way, I mentioned in the text, but it's reconnecting your practice to this really important artist that was a medieval artist in Italy, and made this book of arts where he gave all this receipt, how to prepare every single color, a receipt about everything. So it was really, that was at the base of the history of art, and especially because he was one of those that introduced in a certain way the practice of Giotto. Everyone knows Giotto and how it was good to give that blue color on every surface in his fresco. So it's again about a book just to help other artists that they were there and just to learn the process. So sometimes I'm comparing you to that kind of methodology, discipline, and practice that was so common at that time when there were no internet, no Google, nothing, and people, they try to keep themselves informed, just give and to someone else that was there, an artist, all this information about how to prepare something and a good fresco, a good paint, and all these things. Anyway, we are now in this room that we are now in front of completely different medium. So no more canvas, no more clay, just a paper. So work on paper, and at the end of the River Gallery, you see the painting that I mentioned before. This is, for me, it was the first time that I saw, I was thinking, okay, this is the end in a certain way, because it's representing, in my opinion, really the essence of all your research in a certain way, because you can see through the canvas, you can see that you are not anymore, your eyes, they are not anymore stopped. Oh, there is not anymore canvas everywhere. You can see through the frame, so you are free to look through the painting. Or in this case, I try to express hanging the painting, suspending the painting, because it's helping probably the visitor just to see really through the painting and through even his work, because this is really give the kind of, it's not anymore a painting, it's probably a sculpture. You can walk around. It's not anymore something that you have necessarily hang on the wall. It's something like you can walk around and have a different experience from the front to the back. And so it is about experiencing a work more than look at a work. It's not anymore like, oh, I have to stand here and look at the painting. No. You can walk around the painting and see the front and see the back. It's not anymore like the other painting where you can see the front and the back, all the past. In this case, it's a finished painting, and it's giving you anyway the chance to see and have this kind of experience and live the art with kind of freedom, not necessarily looking at the work in a standard way that we are used to see. And then all these pieces, they are absolutely great, especially, I'm sorry today because we don't have sun, but anyway, they are great because all the frames and those drops, how I have just called them, so they are incredible for all the colors that he is using. And maybe, because this is one of the questions that all the time I'm just getting here, how is possible, how he is doing these drops, and how they are, how you are creating those, and especially how you can get all these perfect anyway lines where the colors, they are not mixing together, but you see the sequence.
I don't know if I should answer that really.
Okay.
I mean, because it's something that I developed in the last 10 years, I suppose.
Yeah, of course.
It would take me like 10 seconds to show you. But like, I kind of thought that it has a certain value because people don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's an intrigue, so they're like, how did you do that?
Your magic ingredient.
So, I mean, because I don't want to make something mysterious
Yeah.
or to add mystery to it, but I still think, you know, it's a rabbit in a hat in a way. Like, if you knew exactly how I did it, I don't think people would even look at them. You know, they'd be like, That's just
But look at this image. All the time people, they are asking, oh, this drop, how it's possible?
Yeah.
So this is again something that is giving you an idea of how things they, okay, maybe they are easy for you,
Well, okay.
but they are easy now.
Well, okay, the thing is then, a lot of
Don't share it if you don't want
No,
to.
no, it's not that. A lot of what I do in my practice, I try to keep the best or the purest pigment.
Yes.
So behind all of these paintings, there is the cheapest paint, or not the cheapest, but the one with the least pigment. So the brightest or the purest pigments are on the top, and then it's floated on a different kind of paint. So if you cut it in half, you wouldn't have paint all the way through in this particular series. So that's one of the ways that I'm doing this, maintaining those lines. It's not necessarily the same with all these kinds of works. I mean, there is on the other wall the larger painting in there. If you cut that in half, it's just paint all the way through. There's no other support. There's nothing else there. So, but to Valeria's point about this canvas, which ties in with these works as well. When you think about canvas, like why do we still use canvases? It's like 4 pieces of wood. It has this sort of cotton or has this material stretched across it, and that apparently is still coming from Venice. The idea came from Venice. People used to paint on these panels, wooden panels, and they're quite heavy. So like there's a big Venice being this sort of important port, shipping port for merchants. There's plenty of sails from ships. So people said, why don't we paint this, stretch it on a canvas? And that became the new normal. It was like wooden pieces of wood with this material, so it cut out the weight. But we still use it, and we don't really look at it and go, yeah, but that's a thing from the 1500s. Why are we still doing that? So it's a limitation, but that's why I liked it as well, because you're actually, and that ties in with these. It's like when I started to work with them, I'd have these white frames, and it's like, that's really sterile. Like, why are frames? I talked to my framer. I says, do you have any like yellow or green? She goes, no, people don't buy it. People don't want it. And I was like, well, I guess because it wouldn't go on their home, it wouldn't go on their walls. So then what fits in your home determines what's available, or determines
Yes, the request is determining what
basically how you're going to do it. So I had to colour the frames myself, just to make them, again, because I like that this touches the wall. Now this interferes with the wall. This green colour is now part of the space, more than if it was white, because white frames are just the frame becomes invisible. Like a good frame, you're not really looking at it. But this one I wanted you to look at, because so the green here is when you have, the green frame isolates the green here, so it pushes it back. So then the rest of the colours can come forward. So it has a different sort of a dynamic. You can't do that with white frames.
And the aesthetic of it as well really complements the work.
Oh yeah.
And you can see in this space, I mean, it's incredible the way the work pops with the colour of the frame and the light from the window.
The thing was, it's like how much, I mean, I know some people could answer this, but how much colour is too much? So for me, I just kept wondering if I went a little bit further, if I tried these colours together, how they would react. And I didn't necessarily have my own system for that. I mean, I didn't have one to follow, so I sort of made my own. There's certain colours that I think work well, and others that don't, but that's not coming from art history or from, I don't know, it's just from looking at them for so long. I think these work and these don't, so then you start to develop your own kind of system, if you like, and that's part of the notebooks too. Yeah, so these ones as well, I love the paper. It's this really old stock, and it's very heavy, it's textured. Again, that aspect of texture when you look at it, and you can see the shadows. That you got this decal edge, you have some rough edges, so you can tell that it's gone through human hands. It's not this machine pressed perfect thing. That's important to me too, because the work of the hands, I mean, that connects me to my ancestors. Like, they were all skilled tradespeople of one description. If it was craft or even just like labour or whatever, but that's who I am as a person. That's how I connect, fine art with manual labour in a sense, or craft maybe. I don't know what to call it, but
I don't know. But for me, it's again about the use of clay. Probably it's more the most authentic maybe material that you are using for who you are, because anyway the clay could be, you can impress your fingerprints, you can impress really your energy, your work, and at the same time it can be broken and it could be not completely perfect. You can see sometimes that kind of mistakes like bubbles or something that is happening because it's an organic material, and it's great because it's really representing who you are and your identity. And as you say about this paper, it's good that there is this rough top because in the case of your work, I don't want to see something that is absolutely perfectly finished, because it would be like you could miss all the process and what there is all behind. Because yes, about this receipt anyway took for you years and years to arrive where you are. So after so many tests and experiment and research, and really you are acting really like all this master that they worked at the past, like in Venice. There was Tiziano, and he was there working on a canvas, left the canvas there for years, and then come back and work again, and developing the process again. And at the end of his life, he arrived to a very impressionistic style that is not a kind of it's not the right standard that you expected from a master of that time. So everything was at the end of his life sketched, because anyway he arrived at the essence of the matter, of the paint, of the color, not anymore interested in a perfect face or dress of a lady, but something that was more sketch and represented better the soul of the representation. The shape was much more important than something else that was okay. Just gave to I don't know in English, to Dodge in Venice. A good portrait more than represent something else.
Okay.
So,
Well, there's that point about materials, because clay is the most basic material. Paper, paint, acrylic paint, canvas, wood. These are all materials that they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. There was some installation I saw recently. Some artist put a block of solid gold in Central Park, and because gold has all of these associations through history, it has a material value, and that was the work. It was a block of gold, and how people responded and reacted. So the work for me is to take these materials, and there's a sort of an alchemy theme to this, is to take these most common materials and with just time and process, see if you can transform them into something that, it's sort of elevated in a sense, because you've paid attention, or you've paid a certain care to it.
Yeah.
So.
And then again, the soul of matter, the title, it's coming from one of the chapter of the book of Jung. So about alchemy. So it's about really the research to find the essence of the soul of the material. But in this case, material, it's not means material, but the soul of your identity, your life and the process. Because usually people, they think, alchemy, it's something like, the process to transform a stone to a gold. And no, it's not about, it's about the journey. It's about the process that you have. You have to start the journey to see where you are going. Essentially, it's much more about the process to develop a better yourself than something else that you are turning in a gold piece. So the association of the gold is absolutely good. So,
does anybody have any questions for this space?
Basically, there's a curiosity about the choice of the frame and also glass. So it's all about the material again. And the glass being made of sand is part and parcel of the work. And if there's any kind of like, what I'm trying to say, yeah, it is the fact that even the glass itself is one type of material.
Not necessarily, because I've been born at this moment in history, and I've inherited all of these languages, frames, canvas, acrylic paint and stuff. These are just things that are considered, they're standards for an artist or for art practices. You go into somebody's home, you're going to have a wooden frame, maybe one with glass, maybe one without, and they're just part of the language of looking, of art. So I actually never considered the glass to that degree, other than the type of glass, if it was reflective or anti-reflective. But for me, when I take these works, I just stick them on my wall in my studio. That's how I look at them. But then there's a certain formality, again, of being in a gallery. They need to be presented in a certain way. So that was what I thought of.
Okay, we move on to the.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What time scale would you put into one of these small pieces? Because the work seems really intricate and precious.
It depends. Like, to mix the paint would be, to get the mix right would be the first step. I'd say it could take about a day, but in a day I could do about 8.
Yeah.
Because I have to do a batch, and then of those 8, maybe 4 are really good, and the other 4, give them to my friend.
where there are past experiments done. Walking through the river gallery, there is again still part of the process because it's something that was with you for so long, the paperworks, and then we arrive at this room that it's showing at the end of the journey, I feel, because you can see these works, this triptych, that I think is your last strand. And again, is about this interpretation of the work, of the square of canvas that is not anymore a limit, but is something that you can develop, you can give substance. You see all these, waves, and then drops, and everything that is giving life to these paintings. And again, we have another piece with clay, and this is, I feel like this is a unique piece, and I love the blue background because in this case, anyway, I can see after all the studio visits, the connection with the blue that is recalling for me the blue of the Renaissance and all that references that maybe they are not visual references because you are using those postcards and photos of all like Botticelli, for example, or all those artists from the past, more for inspiring you about the colors more than a kind of figurative reference, but just to have a palette, again, that is connecting you in an absolutely contemporary way to this history that is part of Renaissance and is part of I feel like a human history more than only history of art, because it's representing the blue, like the blue of the sky, but the blue of all those figures that they were really called gods at the time. And then we have anyway another statuette, so that is maybe that can be connected again with classical art and all this
elements that they are coming from the past anyway, and then you are elaborating probably all these images in your own personal way.
Well, so to Valeria's point, this room is sort of, the finished, if you like, or the sort of the more formalized works.
Thanks for the right word.
From the studio. So you're working up in scale, and then you get a little bit more courageous, and then attempt to work on a larger scale. Because some things you do work quite well on a smaller scale. Like some of those paper works out there, they don't work on a larger scale. They just don't work. It looks like something else. So there's certain things that can only work on a certain scale.
Oh, but paper is working always on a small scale.
I think so, yeah.
This is from our past again, the use of paper.
So then the idea with, even just from a general view of the history of art history, like if you haven't studied art history, everything is about, I think Jesus is the most portrayed figure in all painting. And then you have all of these, like the Renaissance, you have the kind of pigments that they used and the colours, and we often saw like fabric draped. It was a way to show depth. You have these dark shadows and highlights. And there's certain aspects of those colours that I would go back to again and again when they're seen in that way, but not necessarily revisiting a narrative. It was really just the kinds of works. So this room then, to me this was the last one. This will be the last one I do. I was done then. It was like, right, I'm happy. That's kind of what I wanted to say with that work to that point, and then I don't need to. Because you mentioned struggle earlier, and it's not necessarily a struggle. It doesn't have to be, but it's a lot of labour to finally, a lot of trial and error to finally get to the point. Like, okay, that's it. I'm happy that that's what it could do, and that's what it's done. I don't need to visit that anymore. So then in this room, the best space in here I felt was this wall here, so then we conceived this like a triptych. And in that sense, you do have this aspect of time where you have, the longer you let this run, you have more distortion at the end. So you do capture the sense of time there as well. But potentially you could go quite far with this, and then it would be completely unrecognisable at the end. And I don't know, I think it's, I'm kind of happy with what it is as it stands. It's a really kind of, it's almost like a cartoon, like if you saw a cartoon and the paint was melting, it would be like that. But yet it's in the room, and you kind of recognise it as such, and like, you can immediately recognise, it looks like the paint's coming off the wall there. You don't need to qualify with art history. You don't need to say like, that's about this movement in time, or it's just, I like that it can be just what it is. I have all my reasons and why, and I don't want to put them in front of the work. So my parents' friends saw that the show was on today, and they said that they didn't want to come because I wouldn't understand that. I wouldn't get it.
Oh no.
So that's the thing that I've always tried to work against, is this notion of exclusivity, and this notion that, your view, anybody's view, even like the children, would be like, well, it's as valid as anyone else. It's just because you haven't, I'm after saying...
There are so many levels that I feel like your work, they are very accessible, because there are so many levels that you can read them. You can read them from lines, from colors, from waves and light and shadow. There are so many levels. You can go in deep, you can stay on the surface. There is no right, there is no wrong. There is just an interaction between you and your work about the scale, about all these things. And I feel like anyway, probably the time, the progression and the time is really easy and accessible anyway for everyone to understand. That maybe if they don't know all about your work and where you are coming from and all these things, but anyway you can see absolutely very well how this taking time for you, about your life, time for the painting. So there are so many levels of time, and time for us that we are now visiting your exhibition, staying in front of your work. and you can just enjoy the painting as it is, and there is no shape, so you can give to the imagination the freedom to read all these paintings how you prefer. There is no limit to the creativity for you and for the visitor as well. So the viewer is free. And,
well, that's the thing. I didn't want to. There's like no long. I mean, I didn't want to have like to borrow from history, you know, because if you take any painting and you call it, you know, World War II, you're like, oh, you're borrowing from those kind of horrors and the things that happened there. So you necessarily need to have some understanding of history, if you like, or give it a title like, you know, My Divorce or something like this. You know what I mean? Then you've got this sense that this, oh God, this is a black painting. You know what I mean? But I didn't want to do that. Like your experience of these, like if you think of red and yellow, you know, that's just McDonald's, you know what I mean? But that's not fair, like, you know.
not anymore, because now they moved to yellow and green.
Or did they?
Yes, because green is representing more the earth, and they are respecting the earth now
really
the planet. See how you are trying to manipulate the message through the colors.
Yeah,
because
completely,
anyway,
completely.
colors, they have, unfortunately, a meaning. The blue is representing, anyway, the sky
So they have, I mean,
and
that's
God.
the thing. So they have a representative meaning, and then you could say it has an art history meaning, and then, you know, childhood, like pink is for girls and blue is
Yes,
for
there is an
boys.
association.
But if you went back further, it was the opposite.
Oh, no.
You know, so our relationship with colours as individuals and collectively in society or whatever, I think can be a little bit blinkered because of the only time when you're driving around in the country roads here, the only time you really see colours are flags. You see county flags, you know, and they're really vibrant, and that's what those colours mean in that area. But if I took those colours over here, they don't have the same meaning. So, but beyond, because this word is a dangerous word, meaning, like, you know,
Of course.
beyond this, it's an association. These colours.
Absolutely.
If you, yesterday, I think I got a bit sunburned, but yesterday when I was outside, and you have like perfectly blue sky above and this green field, like you have the impression that you're in the colours. You're not looking at the colours, you're in the colours. So there's a kind of an effect from this, I find. And that's something that I try to work with as well. I just try to fill the visual field with this sense of colour, without it being about one association or another, or my associations. So.
And it's great to see that you see so much colour in your life, because I think a lot of people just see black and grey.
It's mad, because even the day I came here to install, and one of the frames was hanging off there, and I went down the street here, and there was like Flannery's down there. It's like, and they just go mad with the colours.
Yeah.
And on days like this, you see when you've grown up in this environment, and this is perfect light for photographing things because it's very even, you know. But it's not for looking out the window, or it's not for being
for
outside,
us.
you know. But as a contrast to these colours, it's like, you know, because the colours, the sky is blue above those clouds. We just, you know, can't see it until maybe, hopefully later, we're going to see it. You know, so.
So Derek, sorry, 1 second. Children seem to be enamored by your work. Was it a subconscious kind of action to make the work relatable to children, make it immediate through the use of colour, or is it like a happy coincidence?
That's a great question. If you think about, you could give a child like like a bucket, and then it's like a submarine or something, you know, and there's just the quality of their imagination and creativity is just boundless, and it's only later maybe they start to limit it. Well, how am I going to use this or whatever? So when I start the work, I try to tap into that. I try to tap into that sense of like, you know, if you remember stuff like Play-Doh or Morla, as we used to call it, like, and those colours, you never see them in life. They're so vibrant. Eventually it turns brown, you know, you mix it all together. But those kinds of things like that, kind of, it's a sense of wonder that children have, and it's a sense of wonder that I try to keep that alive, and keep that alive in the work. So I definitely think it's connected. You know, I'm not trying to recapture my childhood, but I try to tap into that sense of curiosity and of wonder and of like just the sense that, you know, say you're a child and you're drawing a picture. Of course, the cow is going to be purple. You know, why do I have to explain it? You don't have these kind of more rigid rules, and I think that's something that. So I'm really curious to see how, you know, the school groups, what they say and how they respond, because it's as much about them as anybody, you know. So if you can, I think you can really succeed in that sense. If you can have like kids come in here and they're like, and they go away with just this sense, oh, look at this paintings or melt, it was like cartoons or whatever, brilliant. They're not going away thinking like, oh, I don't know what the hell that was about. Like, you know? So that's important to me, because that's how I felt when I was a child. Like, what is this thing on the wall here? I look at this picture of like some guy in the 1500s, like, what is this, you know? And then you have to read and history and all this other stuff, but you can't really, like, you take a child into the National Portrait Gallery in London, like, maybe they're looking at the people, but they don't necessarily, like, what does that mean, you know? It's like there's just some guy on the, you know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, so that's...
The children give their instant reaction.
Exactly, yeah.
They're
And,
very
and they want to touch it,
honest.
they want to, like, you know, is this the way?
They'll either love it or they'll hate it,
Yeah.
and they'll tell you why, and they are.
I think that's great, though. I really do. A friend of mine visited with her kids, and she said, I can't remember her son's name, Sean, I think, and he just ran up and he wanted to touch it. And I was like, well, you know, gallery rules and so on, but I mean, that's what I'd want to do. I'd want to see, like, is that wet? And what's the story with that, you know? And there's that aspect of sight as well.
For this reason, we have the table, so people they are free
Yes,
to touch.
you go, yeah, yeah.
Next time, snuff is scratch a sniff.
Well, I've seen artists do that. You know, they have these interactive aspects with their work. You know, so.
Derek, could you talk to us a little bit about the figurative sculpture?
Our
Okay.
favourite.
Yeah, I will. So I used to live in Italy, and I got this clay figurine in Naples, and it's been with me for a long time. It's the only kind of figurative piece here, but when I went through in general, I think colour, it just can transform a space, it can transform an object. So I wanted to sort of work with an object, a pre-existing object, to see how you could change it. So for me, I think part of the reason this works, it's like it's a natural clay figure, but we're used to seeing these kinds of figures in white, you know, white marbles, even though possibly they were painted in the past. But so I think the white paint here, it feels like a skin, you know, in a sense. So it has, I think you can read it in two ways. While the lines here almost feel like a line of a dress or jewellery or something. It just works the way, you're never going to get away from gravity. That's why these things are all upside down, you know. So everything comes up and goes down. So, you know, as you get older and you get the bags under your eyes and stuff, everything's coming down. So that's why, you know, the paint comes down in this way, you know. So I just didn't want it. A lot of people wanted me to do more, a lot of people wanted to buy it, but it was just, again, this is just a personal moment for me. It was like, yeah, I think that really does transform it. That's all I need to know. I don't want to start to make a lot of these things, because that was the result I needed. It was like, that works, and that's it. So it's my favourite. I actually usually have it in my van on the dashboard, looking back at it. Yeah. So I don't know what else to say. It's just because it's a human figure, it's much more attractive to a broader audience, because you identify a woman. Abstract work in general can be really off-putting for many people, even the word abstract. So you could do this kind of work with, you know, human sculptures or figures or whatever, but it's just not necessarily it's not where I wanted to go. So any questions about it in particular? Somebody had asked me before. No. Any questions in general?
Is this something you think you'll explore more then?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I have done, and I did a lot, and I tried different scales, and basically I went to second-hand or vintage shops, and I found these kind of bizarre figures, and I worked with them. It just didn't work. It just didn't read well. There's a historical association with the figure. I mean, I had one that was of Jesus, and it was, you can't get away from the religious aspect, and then it could be irreverent to some people. This figure here was, it's an unknown figure. It's not intended to be the Virgin Mary. It's not intended to be a historical figure. So I think that works. But no, I think that was it. It's like just this little moment, and that was it. So.
Is there any association that you just can't get away from?
In general, the colours?
Yeah. With your work?
Maybe the blue, like ultramarine blue. That's, again, just because of how we were raised. The pigment ultramarine blue was really expensive, and subsequently became the pigment that was used to depict the Virgin Mary.
Yes.
So
And
all
the
over,
sky,
growing up
yeah.
in Ireland, you'd always see the Virgin Mary blue. And the sky, of course.
Yeah,
So
because it's God again. So with God you have the gold stars and blue, so it's most expensive.
again, this comes back to the value of materials. So
Yeah.
gold, religious paintings, when you go back far enough, there was gold frames, or sometimes gold leaf was used, or gold was used for figures. It was an expensive material. It's not expensive. It's an important material. It's an important image.
Yeah.
So lapis lazuli was the pigment ultramarine blue. So when they discovered that or started to use it, was so expensive.
Oh,
It could
absolutely.
only be used for the most important, which was the sky, was where God came from, and the Virgin Mary. So
Yes.
that, to me, I'll never get away
And
from
at the
that.
same time represented even how much money had the family that commissioned that painting or chapel or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was a demonstration how much is important. Of course, for example, in a painting, okay, the role of God or Virgin Mary, they are at the center, so they need to be respected with most important or expensive material.
Yeah.
But at the same time, represented even how much money and power had the family that commissioned the painting. And so that was anyway an association and a demonstration of how important I'm someone that has a value in this society at the same time. And that is absolutely not what you want.
No, not at all. If you think of, like, in a really practical sense, how does an artist make a living? Like, how do you survive? How do you pay rent? And when you go back far enough, artists worked with kings or queens who are attached to the castle. And that's why we have all these pictures of kings and queens and politicians. They're people who could pay for the artist's time necessarily. So then, contemporary art now, the question remains, how do you make a living? But those associations from seeing so many pictures with this sort of lapis lazuli, beautiful massive blue sky, small figures, massive sky, I think it was like kind of showing off,
Yes.
if you like. So
They had notions.
they basically have notions, yeah, totally.
And at least they invested in the art, so that's the other
That's
side.
true. You can't have, that's the thing, and that's why we have these such good records of these paintings and of these people, and which is they invested in the art for their own egos.
Yes, absolutely.
But still, they invested in
Wrong
the art.
reasons,
You know what I
but they
mean?
did.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So
And anybody, sorry.
I mean, a lot of arts, as you mentioned, like contains the late JC, but a lot of that art was sponsored by the church, and it was in their interest to promote.
absolutely,
Jesus.
yeah. I mean, because I'm from Kells, so the cross of Kells being this like a narrative device. So you have these, obviously we've grown up with using images to convey a message, whatever that message is. So the most beautiful and the most important artworks are in the Vatican or in the church or in the religious, because just purely because of the need for them, I suppose, the importance, cultural importance of them. So yeah, it makes sense.
But they had the power and the money to be able to do that as well, and promote what they were trying to sell.
Yeah, it was like, there is always the element of, I actually saw a photographer recently, Martin Parr, and he said, every image, every photograph, everything you look at that's an image is a form of propaganda.
Yes, absolutely.
It's telling you something
It
and
was
it wants you to
propaganda at
believe
the time.
something.
Now we use
No,
it
I mean,
different.
like even when you look at photographs, like modern photographs, you're like, okay, well, this is a better version of reality than your
absolutely, yes.
So, again, I try to think about, why isn't this version of reality the best, where you are in this moment? Because, often there's something else pulling you to a different place, So I wanted my paints to drip into this place because this is the best place to be. It's where you are, So, in one sense, simple things. So.
Could I just ask?
Sure.
So it's very obvious that the process is hugely important and the craft of painting, I suppose. Is it easy to name the pieces?
No.
Is it like the hand that moves?
No.
Or
I had this conversation earlier. In the beginning, I would just name them Untitled, 1 to 20, whatever, and it's just, that's off-putting for people as well. It's like, well, that doesn't mean anything. So it's probably one of the hardest parts of the work is the last thing, is to name them, because you don't want to be flippant. So this piece is called The Hand That Moves, and basically, for me, you can see that there was something underneath, and now it's not there. So there's a kind of a surface where there was something that manipulated or removed it, so the hand that moved it, if you like. So that was kind of what I came up with that one. And sometimes titles can be a way to access the work as well, to give it a sort of another way to approach it. Again, it's a formality that we've inherited as image makers. I'd love to just not title them. But then what you have numbers, number 1, number 7, that works
My
again.
rent is €1,200 a month, and that will motivate people.
I would draw from poetry, I would draw from stories that I was reading, ideas of other artists and so on, and I try to kind of use certain ideas when I'm naming them. So
I find that stage frustrating.
yeah, I do. It's horrible.
Yes, all the time when I was there asking,
What's the
title?
What's the name of this? I don't know.
and I say, I made that name.
Do you think that you've created pressure for yourself trying to link the name to the work?
I don't want. Again, I just don't want to. The name will live longer than I will. The name will live longer than probably the painting. I don't know. It's just showing a connection to something else. So I can't just be the top of my head what I'm thinking today. So I need time to access sort of stillness and just to be quiet and sort of listen. So that can be frustrating because in the midst of all of the busyness of getting stuff ready, what's the title for this? I'm like, I don't know what to do. So.
And the name is stuck with it.
Totally.
Yes.
So there are a few. There's a few out there. I'm like, oh god.
But that way, it's what I am appreciating, because usually when you are a poor abstract painter, you don't want to associate your abstraction with anything. So Untitled is the most spontaneous way to give a title to something that is abstract. But in your case, I really appreciated that you are trying to give something that is not a reference, but in the same time, in that case, the move. So the hands that they are moved, it's kind of, I see in a certain way how you were there moving that clay to give you with your hands that waves. So it's in a way connecting me to the process again, more than something that, landscape, tree, or something that is giving me, but he's giving me more emotions and feelings than something that I'm associating with a visual reference. So it's a kind of evocation, it's again something that is connecting me to the process that I feel that is the most important thing. Probably because I'm a curator, I'm an art historian, so I'm more interested in the process more than see, oh, look, it's gorgeous. But everyone can see that it's gorgeous. But I want to see the dirty things, how they happen. So how this magic is coming, where is, and all this energy and the hands that are moving. Oh, that's great. That's absolutely great. So, thanks for giving these strange sometimes titles, but that they are giving us something to think about.
Anybody else have any questions? questions?
Yeah, well, on the creative process, when you get to your studio, do you already visualize the painting and do you have an idea what you're going to do? Or
Question.
how do you select, I guess, that even the sequence of the colors there? Do you improvise or is it something you already have in mind?
Certainly. So when I go into the studio, usually a lot of what I would end up doing is sort of quite mechanical. Whether if it's mixing or something, you're not actually looking at a creative eye. You're not considering, and there's only a small part that's okay. Now I need to consider how this moves. The sequence of colours comes from, for me, it comes from the paperworks. Certain colours to me that would work together. So I started to build a kind of my understanding of the sequence that I could draw on then again later. I'd say, well, I know if you look at these kinds of works, always the top colour is blue or dark. And I felt that when I tried other alternatives, it didn't work. And it could be, actually I don't know why it is, I have no idea, but I just know that it only worked when I used a blue or darker colour. And that was one thing.
You did a lot about research and find the sequence.
Basically, yeah, there's certain like...
Now you are trained, so for you it's more instinctive.
Well, basically, yeah. So when I, as I see when I made this one, because I've done so many studies, I was like, yeah, well, I know from before. I still have that feeling. I remember that these two don't work together. I know that this one does. There's almost an attempt at a pattern emerging. You just might start to see like A, B, C, and then it's broken. So part of your mind, I think, is looking for a pattern, and then it just gives you another way to engage, another way to approach it. So if that was regular, it would be horrible, I think. I don't know how it would...
Yeah, no, absolutely. It would be boring.
Yeah.
And for me, these two are representing very well these kind of lines, the sequence, the time, how they are working. And they are still like a wet, like a wave painting that is still, could be something that is still in process. I don't know, it's about really the gravity, probably, that you are giving.
I will say though,
Feelings.
so the creative process then for me is, it's now, it's when I'm driving, it's when I'm walking the dogs, or cooking dinner or something, it's always, and then when I'm in the studio, it's like I have my notes, I'm like, I remember I had this idea to try this, and then I try it, could be 5 minutes, okay, that didn't work, what was the other idea, and then it's such a small part of the day is the actual getting to test that idea. I don't know where they come from or when they arrive, but so sometimes it's just mechanical where I'm just like I have to frame these paintings or whatever. Yeah, I suppose this is just try to get into a flow where you're not getting too focused on this big white canvas, like what am I going to do on this now?
Maybe you are trying to be very receptive in a certain way, just staying all the time connected with your creativity, even when you are walking, biking, driving, and do your just normal things. But because it's a kind of, there is no borders and no limit anymore to you between you as a person and you as an artist. Because you trained you a lot and you pushed anyway you a lot to be now what you are, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to have like this sense that you have to kind of, like limber up, you're going to do performance in here. It's just like kind of walking in like the same as if you were outside, and yeah, so I think creativity works best like that, where it's always on and it's always...
Yeah, there is nothing that you are finishing and say, okay, that's done, okay.
Done with that. Yeah, so
But then, after this exhibition, you can start.
no, I won't.
Are they for sale and how much for?
These ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I think...
There is a list
There is a
on the
list.
front, yes, at the reception, yes, there are all the price there.
Because I mean, you mentioned the expense of the materials and stuff.
Well, the thing was, I suppose it takes any artist a bit of time to internalise, but the price now, because you're not getting paid by the hour, you also, I have to I was prompted, I have to consider all the time that I put in behind me to get to this point, all the time that I wasn't working, for example. So I have no question about the value of this work, because it has been more than 10 years of my life to get these to this point, you know. And there was obviously a long time where I was like, oh, look, you know, if you can give us a tenner for that, or whatever, like, you know, but can't do that, can't live like that. So, you know what I mean? So,
A lot of the reason why artists give up being artists is the poverty.
well, yeah, it is. It's the lifestyle that you're. Because you do sacrifice a lot of things. You do sacrifice the security of, if you want to say the normality, you know. So, yeah, and that's been difficult. It has been. But then I've done all kinds of other things. I've been, you know, I was teaching English, and I did all kinds of jobs in order to facilitate the ability to have decent time to then work, you know, as in a studio. So there's no guaranteed income, that's the thing. So, but that, I think, makes you a more rounded person too, the kind of interactions in the places I've lived. I've lived in Italy, and we studied all these paintings and everything. And but yeah, I mean, probably clear enough. It's not easy, it's definitely not easy, but I'm not playing the fiddle either, you know. This is what I
like to think as a society in Ireland as well that the mindset is changing. You know, I mean, when I was growing up and when I started out in my career, artists weren't paid. And, you know, everybody wanted an artist to do something, be part of a festival, contribute, you know, and create something that would be a legacy in the community. And but they're going to do it for free because artists don't get paid.
It's not a serious work anyway.
You know,
but
so
everyone that they are working in the art, I feel like even me, when people they are asking me what you are doing, oh, beautiful art. Yes, beautiful, because you don't know what there is behind. There is a lot of work just to be an artist or curator, or all the people that they are working in the art. Sometimes people they feel like, oh yes, you can get, oh, you are working with something that is beautiful. But you are not paying your rent with beauty. You are paying your rent with money, unfortunately. And this is something that people they are not considering or taking that serious. So, and it's a pity because if we are losing our connection with beauty and artists, and we are losing a part of our joy, or in a certain way even how to look at the world in a different way, in a creative way. Because anyway, artists, they are giving us the opportunity to look at the world in a different way, even to what is happening in this moment in our world. So it's giving us the opportunity to look at the world and every day, and helped us to interpret the reality in the past. Why not now? Why not we are not anymore used to finance anyway artists, and not only the big established artists that they are part of another anyway, another world, another reality, more than the artists that all the time they are dealing with really the normal life. So, but anyway, today it was a good day just to connect.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, Derick.
Just a couple of dates to bring to your attention as well. I'm going to read these out in case I get them wrong. So Derick's exhibition is here until Sunday the 19th of June. So please spread the word. You're obviously fans, and you've come along today. You've heard what Derick has to say about his work and his practice, so please do, spread the word for us if you wouldn't mind. Derick is actually doing an Instagram takeover on the 12th of May. That's right, isn't it? It's Thursday. So tune in for that. If you're not following Luan Gallery's Instagram, you might do that. Also, if you sign up for our mailing list, you'll get alerts about things that are going to be coming up. We're going to have a virtual coffee chat with Derick on Thursday the 2nd of June. And in between those two events, we have National Drawing Day That's on Saturday, the 21st of May. So Derick has kindly agreed to, I suppose, give 2 workshops. One is going to be in the morning for students, really focused on teenagers, and then we're going to have an adult workshop in the afternoon. So if any of you would like to be part of that, you can leave your details at reception and we'll follow up with you. We haven't fine-tuned those details yet, but we'll be confirming that during the week. But just their dates for your diaries in terms of Derick and his work and the run of the Soul of Matter here. So again, thanks a million everybody for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, Derick, and you, Valeria, and thanks again to our sponsors, Creative Ireland and Westmeath County Council. Thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. I'm sure if anybody would like to have a photo with Derick, we definitely would like. You would say no. So I do a photo.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Yeah, no, it's very good. Okay, perfect.
It makes such a difference to the artists because you may think, that's nice, and then you go and it's like, whoa, and then you understand the process. I didn't even
very good. And she's very yes. No, it's not. We're not or looking theatre. And the ones that you can each one
I feel like at the time we supported each other because I was